Nope.
Welcome to United Shades of Grey.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for another edition of United Shades of Grey. Thank you for tuning in with me as we have this conversation. Normally, we're having conversations on race in America, but I had a very busy week running around with middle schoolers, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth graders, and it has really impacted my decision for what we're going to talk about today. So today, we're going to have a conversation that is a little bit different than our normal conversation. I want to ask you the question, are you smarter than a fifth grader? And we're going to talk about leadership lessons kids master overnight, but adults struggle with. All right, so that will be our theme for today. 11 leadership lessons kids master, but adults seem to struggle with. All right, so that will be our conversation. We're going to get right into tune the things. I am here with my producer, the Rob Father. Rob, why don't you give a shout out to those who are listening via social media and those who will hear this on the radio?
Good evening, United Shades of Grey audience. Happy to be here. Happy to see you here, Kareem.
Well, how you doing, Rob? You doing okay?
Good,
Okay, energy up.
Yeah, hey, 61 years old is the new 41.
61 is the new 41. You heard it here, all right? You heard. All right, so we are, today has been a very exciting day. I don't know about you guys, but I have a background in science, and so I'm a bit of a science nerd when it comes to certain things that happen in the world of technology and science. And on today, it was one of those mornings I woke up with great anticipation. Those of you who are not under a rock and are really aware of what's happening in the world around you, today was the day. It was the launch of Blue Origin. That is Jeff Bezos, Amazon's billionaire leader. They've been working on this for quite a while. SpaceX is a project that he put into operation really to explore space about 20 years ago, 2 decades ago. And now they are at a place where they have today successfully launched Blue Origin, 62-mile journey to the edge of space, Rob. 11 minutes it took for them to get up there. They crossed the barrier, which puts them at the edge of space, floated around for, I think, about 2 minutes. They were weightless, strapped themselves back in, and a safe descent right back to the earth. It was absolutely amazing to watch, and I was so excited. I don't know if you took the time to see any of that, Rob, or not.
I'm not really interested because I'm a Star Trek fan and all that. I wasn't interested in what Bezos is doing. Neither was I with the other guy who did the same thing.
Richard Branson.
Call me when you reach the moon. Call me when you reach Mars. Otherwise, go to edge of space. Astronauts have done, pilots have done close to that, in the past. So,
but Rob, when you look at this is different because this is really moving toward the privatization of space travel. He put his own money up. I think there was two individuals that won a lottery. The oldest person to go into space, and now the youngest 18-year-old person to go into space, plus his brother. But the travel was like something like $28 million for a ticket on this flight.
See, that's why I'll never see that money in my life.
Which is crazy. But the idea of being able to travel and to use space as another tourist site. Of course, those of you who are listening to this, the majority of you and those of us in this studio, we won't have to worry about that, as Rob is saying, because most of us will never. I mean, even if this sounds like an amusement park. I'm not signing up to take a $28 million trip to space. However, I think it's exciting. I think that the possibilities are going to be interesting. I don't know if this is a situation in which we're going to find ourselves, we're going to destroy this planet, and all those who have the resources are going to then get into a rocket ship and fly off somewhere into the sunset. But this is very interesting. I think it opens up a new line of tourism for those who.
Where are they going to go? If they're going to go off the earth, out somewhere else, where are they going to go? Just out to edge of space, yay.
I mean, but think about how that would make, and this is what Bezos said, and I completely understood what he said when he said it. He said that he knew that this flight he knew that it was going to change him. But he was only excited to find out how it was going to change him. And you've heard so many people, even when Neil Armstrong and those astronauts came back, and each subsequent trip to outside of the universe have made, they always come back and say that it gave them a new perspective on human life and how fragile we are and how small we are in comparison to the entire universe. And I would imagine someone like Bezos, who is an innovator, who is a creative mind, who is continually looking to expand horizons, being able to see the world from a new perspective probably would create those juices, get those juices flowing, those creative juices flowing. And there's probably something great that's going to come out of this after seeing the world in a new perspective. And so when I look at that, I think that great minds are always looking for new ways to improve on things that exist and to tap into the horizons of the abyss, if you will, places that we've never been before. Rob, why are you giving me that look?
I'm just listening, you know.
Okay.
Because my perspective is a little bit different.
What's your perspective on
I
this,
can
Rob?
appreciate these billionaires going to space, anyone going to space if they can afford it. However, I guess being more of a down to earth, you know, pardon the pun, person, I'd rather they use that money to help they could put that money to a whole lot of other better things that we need right here on planet Earth, you know, and we talking about people being in debt and what have you, you know. I mean, he could solve the nation's debt, you know, 10 times over. You know, if him and that guy from Virgin Records, whoever he's from, you know,
Branson. You know what I say is David Branson. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I just, you know, I guess because I'm so Star Trekky, so to speak, in my mind from watching it and seeing the future there. In the future, you don't worry about money. And so people that want to go to space could go to space. So I'm looking at, okay, maybe 200 years from now, this will be a thing without so much a cost factor. But going up into space and then coming back, you know, spending 20, I mean, good, innovative, fine.
Well, you got to think, you got to start somewhere. You got to crawl before you can, you know, walk. And so when I look at this, I look at it as really just taking the temperature of, you know, alternate forms of tourism. Now, I do have a concern. One of my concerns is because I'm a big environmental guy. You're not going to catch me, you know, tying myself to a tree, you know, or throwing, you know, paint on people who are wearing furs. I'm not that far. But I do believe that we have a responsibility to take care of what we have been given.
Right.
And so when I look at it and I put it in the perspective of how does this impact the universe, it makes me kind of nervous because one of the key things that I think often happens is that we don't know what happens, Rob, when we go outside of the Earth atmosphere. We don't know what we're opening the Earth to. We don't know what we're bringing back into the Earth and what that is doing to this very thin, just very fine, delicate balance between the sphere that we call Earth, and we have this perfect temperature to live and to breathe in, and how that affects, you know, global warming. Is that, you know, allowing space particles in that are not being burned? You don't ever know. And so all of those things become questions for me. But the fact, the more we get people doing it, I guess the cheaper the cost, and maybe, who knows, by, you know, 2062, we'll all be taking trips to the moon or into outer space like it's just going to the movies. But I think it was interesting. And I think, you know, it's kind of like Neil Armstrong, one small step for man, one giant step for mankind. I think if I got it right, okay, I got it right. I know those sayings were before my time, but you would remember that well, Rob. But I thought that it was interesting. But I thought it was interesting, and I was really excited to see it happen. But I'll tell you what was really interesting is watching that entire process. And I know we're not going to talk about space exploration. That's not what we're talking about today. But like I said, I'm a bit of a science head. What was really interesting is hearing the commentary of former astronauts that were saying that autonomous space travel, which what we saw here, there was no captain, no driver, anyone that was navigating the ship, is actually much safer than having a captain of the ship, so to speak, on board.
Really?
Because most of the errors that occur are human errors. And so if they could use automation and robotics and technology to program these systems and they function the way that they're programmed to happen, then there is no human error. And so this entire opportunity, this entire explorative journey, this 11 minutes of history was completely autonomous, no captain. They went up. There were jets that came out, just before they hit the ground. 3 parachutes went up. It was actually,
all computerized.
it was all animated. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating what we're doing with technology. I think that we tend to put too much in. Like science and animation and all of this other stuff. I remember the movie, I think it was Will Smith was in AI, where all of the computers and the robots started taking on minds and thoughts of their own. We're moving to a society that we are really entering into a place that automation is integrated into the work process on every stand. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out. But I just want to say kudos to Jeff Bezos and those who are part of the SpaceX program on a successful launch and return, 11-minute, 62-mile journey to the edge of space, that they broke the barrier where astronauts receive their title astronaut. So I don't know if we refer to these guys as astronauts now or not, but I definitely want to say kudos to a great job and job well done. Next, I want to talk about something that is not going away, Rob, and we've had this discussion a million times over. Both of us fully vaccinated. We've talked and we've appealed to people both on this radio station, WSGW, and we've talked at length on KISS WTLZ about the importance of vaccination. We've talked about the types of vaccinations. You got the one-shot vaccination. I got the Moderna, the Pfizer, the 2-dose. There's also the Moderna, and we've seen so much backlash and people saying that they were not going to get these vaccinations, that it's crazy and the vaccinations are killing people and all of these things. Well, now we are seeing what happens when we allow certain things go unchecked, Rob. Started in California, and I think about when we were talking about this last, it must have been 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they were saying that the Delta variant, which was, I call it the India variant, because it was the variant that I saw ravage the country of India so desperately. And friends of mine that were there were showing me videos of them, putting bodies in the streets and putting them in ditches, and just because they were overwhelmed because it moved and it spread so fast. We now have gone from it being about 20% of our cases here in the United States to a whopping 80% of all cases that are now COVID related are of the Delta variant species. And I gotta let you guys know this is horrific and it's troubling and it's troublesome, so much to the point that we have very staunch opponents of it. Individuals like Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, who said he wasn't getting vaccinated. He spoke against the vaccination. People should have a choice. He's now encouraging Floridians to get vaccinated. All of the ICUs in Central Florida, that would be Orlando included, all of those cities, their ICUs have now shut down because they are now overwhelmed. They're full to capacity because this variant, and I need you guys to understand this, those who are listening, and hopefully we can get some people to really take a listen in and lean into this conversation. The reason this is so important is because unlike the very first strand of the virus that we've had, the variant that we had the original form, unlike that one, this one appears to be somewhat like 6 to 12 times more contagious. And if it's more contagious and more people are getting sick, then that means that there's more opportunity. There's going to be less opportunity for the kind of healthcare that you need to have taken care of. And that means that more people are going to die because of it. More people will become more infected. Now, I need us to understand that this is only the beginning of something that we really have to lean into, and we really got to begin to think about, what does this mean? This is no longer a time for us to stay political in this issue. This is not a political problem. This is a public health crisis, and it's time for us to lean in and begin to deal with this issue, because it is not going away, and we are really putting ourselves in harm's way. Fox News host Sean Hannity, he's even singing a new tune. He was absolutely against it. The government are infringing on the rights of the human people, our personal health care, HIPAA. We heard all of these things. But on last night, I sat there and watched him say, listen, I've never been against science. A completely new tune, Rob. I've never been against science. I've never been against vaccines. And he encouraged his listeners, his followers, to get vaccinated because of the current situation that's going on. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to see so many people who are going to suffer, Rob, that were on the side of, against it, that because the population is split down the middle. The landscape of our nation politically, unfortunately, mirrors the landscape of who has been vaccinated and who has not been vaccinated. And so folks who could have been saved the precaution, that these issues are now going to suffer the consequences. And it's sad, but my grandmother used to always say, you make your bed, so you got to lie in it. And so I want us to know, those of you who are not sick yet, please go out, get vaccinated while you can, because this is a serious issue that we must learn to deal with. All right. I want to get to our main conversation on today. And Rob, I just want to know if we're going to take a break in here before we get going, or we're all set. Can I continue to go? All right, we're going to keep going. I want to talk about 11 leadership lessons that kids master overnight, but adults struggle with. And I want to tell you guys, over this past 2 weeks, I have had the great pleasure. I told you about some amazing things that were happening in our community and how companies were leaning in to bring science and technology, STEM-related things to our community. And thanks to our great friends out at Hemlock Semiconductor, we had their CEO here, Mark Bassett, and he just they believe in making a difference. And so since all of this stuff is going on, and they're doing some amazing things as it relates, Rob, to giving opportunities for internships. They're looking at, putting classes together for instrumentation that Delta offers. And this STEM camp has been a kickoff to everything that they're doing in the community. And our kids were engaged in using drone technology. Consumers Energy has a program that they actually use drones, in some places that are very dangerous. So we had their lead tech on drone technology come out, and he was showing the kids how to use these drones. And these were like $7,000 things. They were going 7,000 miles in the air, just taking pictures and video. And it was an absolutely amazing thing. And then we had some individuals over at Delta College, Harvey, that's in charge of instrumentation over there, had the kids working what is called the spider crane and it's so interesting. It's a big crane when you spread it out, where they can push a button and it folds down that you can actually fit it through your standard, 7-foot door, and it slides right through and you can take it inside. So the kids got hands-on opportunities to work with those things. And then as we continued this camp, Rob, we started out on Monday with what I consider one of the most awesome classes in computer coding and technology I've seen in a long time. And Mr. Robinson, he has Donald Robinson, and he's out of Detroit. He taught these kids coding and coding languages, CSS and JavaScript and HTML. And the kids were picking it up. I think that our kids are so resilient when we challenge them. It's crazy how we baby our kids and we say, no, that's too much. You're pushing them too hard. But I saw these kids pick up on these technical languages that people go to school or sit in classes for forever to learn. And by the end of this, they were creating and doing some app development. They were creating the basics of their web pages. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this continues to develop, Rob. So we went from there. And then on Tuesday, myself and Code 313, we taught a class on the science of DNA. And we were talking, showed strawberry DNA, how you could extract it, and how DNA isn't everything. And so they, did an experiment using their DNA. And we talked about how it was important for DNA, how it operates, what things were necessary for it to be developed, and how do we keep it strong, and how do we pass it on. And these young scientists were blowing me away with their ability to handle and to utilize and to divide and to negotiate this information in such a way that they were explaining it to one another and putting it in forms of writing that showed you their self-expression, through their self-expression, that they understood it. So we just continued. We did a structural engineer, Jay Garth, comes in. He has an organization that he works with young Black kids called Engineering While Black. We used to have another thing, Rob, in the community with DWB, Driving While Black. And that basically meant that, what happens to many African-American men when they're driving in the community, they get pulled over to police. Well, he, as a young man, he had an experience that was very similar. Engineer, has been doing extremely well, was coming home to visit family. He has a really nice brand new Jeep. It's a Cherokee, not a Wrangler. Real Jeeps are only Wrangler. It was a portion or a type or a attempt at being a Jeep, but I love it. It was a beautiful Jeep, and he was pulled over, and guns were pulled out on him, and they thought, they were saying, we thought you were this person who had done this crime. And here you are, a young, prolific engineer. And so he came up with the idea, EWB, Engineering While Black. And he challenged these young people. And this is probably one of the coolest things. He showed these young kids how to build buildings. And he went through the process of tying ends together and how you formulate your beams and your structures. And so these kids built these structures, Robs, based upon however high they wanted to out of balsa wood. And they built these structures. And then once they built them, they weighed them. And I was like, well, why do you have them weighing the buildings? He says, because we need to know how much, live load these buildings can handle, and coming from that background, I understood that. They began to build these buildings, and some of these buildings were like 107, 127 pounds they were able to withstand. And it was just so exciting to see these young people, their minds light up. Their parents were excited, and they were like, listen, we were able to do it. We understand how building now works. And they were excited about that. We continued through this process. We brought in music and other things. And so what I'm saying, Rob, is that I'm very thankful for HSC and Dick Garber, who stepped in, and he also played a great part of Garber Management Group here. And they leaned in for our kids in the community. And these kids' minds are being stretched and being transformed this coming Friday. They're doing a pitch competition, Rob, and I've been working with them on the importance and how to do a pitch, how to convey your message, how to really captivate an audience. And they have been just soaking this information up. But what I learned about these kids and working with these kids, it only took me a couple of days, Rob, for me to give some very key points, lessons of leadership. We talked about what a leader was, and many of you attribute this, I think, to John Quincy Adams or one of the presidents, but it was actually Dolly Parton who actually said this, that a leader is one who inspires others to do more, to be more, to become more, to achieve more. Dolly from Dollyland, I'm going to give you your tribute because it was you, and they try to give it to all of these other men, but no, it was a young, small frame woman named Dolly Parton who came up with that. And so I was sharing that with them, Rob, and challenging them, how this is how you want to lead your people. You leaders lead by influence, and we're giving them all of these lessons. And I saw these young 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders pick up these lessons, and I saw them begin to engage their teams and their partners on how they were moving and navigating through these experiments on solar energy, because this second week has been totally about solar energy, and how they're talking about solar cells, and they're talking about polysilicon, and they're talking about all of these pieces, and how do we begin to revolutionize our community? How do we impact our community? And how they're operating through those leadership lessons. And I thought about it. I said to one of the attorneys, listen, these kids are picking this stuff up in the matter of days. And these are lessons that I'm beating over the head of, some of my personal leaders that are part of the organizations I'm with, some of the CEOs and presidents that I've worked with, because they understand that when something works, if it works for you and it's good for you, then let's utilize it. Let's put it to work. And I saw these young minds take these leadership lessons that I'm going to share with you guys today and put them into operation. And so I say to you guys that are a part of the HSC and Me Full Steam Ahead camp, kudos to you all. And hopefully you'll hear this message and know that you guys are doing something amazing. For the rest of you old heads out there, you leaders, you CEOs, you presidents, you managers of companies, even if you're a frontline manager, I want you to lean into this conversation because it's going to be important for us to take these 11 leadership lessons that kids master, but adults often struggle with. I want you to put them in operation. I want you to think about how you can utilize them. And let's see if we can tap into the inner child and begin to make great things happen. I've always thought that collaboration inspires innovation. So we're going to work together on today to see if that we can bring something in a collaborative effort in terms of our understanding and our education to bring a transformative change to our communities, to our workplaces, and to our environment. I want you guys all to stay, don't go away. We'll be back with more with United Shades of Gray.
Don't go too early because you cut yourself short on the time. So when I do this, that's when you need to hurry up on it, Kareem. Kareem. Okay. This goes up here.
So there's not going to be any sound on this video.
Really?
No, because over there, your computer was plugged into the board. Over here, my computer is not plugged into the board. So that's why people were logging in and leaving.
How is that possible if we don't use the plug?
When you were over there, your computer wasn't plugged into directly wired into your. Remember, we put the.
I know we used the plug here, but we thought we didn't need it since we were doing the same thing we did in TLZ.
But in TLZ, your computer was plugged into the board. Mine may not have been, but yours was.
Oh, I'm sorry. For some reason, I don't know why I can't get this StreamYard thing together. What's going on? I did the best I can with it. And when I come in, everything's supposed to be set up. All I got to do is just log onto the thing and set it up. I don't know why.
Well, we might be okay. Let me I'll check really quick. Another source.
I'm screwing up on it for some reason.
Looks like we might be okay.
So I need to have the PC potted up then.
Yeah, we'll see because I am picking up
the same configuration. When we in TLZ, it's everything. We just plug to the board here.
Okay, we might be okay. I might just be overthinking it.
Let's see, unmute here. That's my mic. Let's unmute there. Gotta get started because Larry's moving here shortly.
Yep.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
Thank you for tuning in and staying tuned to United Shades of Gray, conversations on race in America. Today, as I promised, those of you who were here before the break, that we were going to have 11 leadership lessons kids master overnight, but adults struggle with. And for those of you who are just tuning in, we are having a conversation because I was impacted in such a powerful way working with middle schoolers for the past 2 weeks, talking about science, technology, building teams, and seeing leaders emerge out of those teams, and how those young people were able to grasp onto some of the things that we've been dealing with and understanding very fast and implement them into their day-to-day strategies. And so I want to give those same lessons to you all as you're listening today. Hopefully you can tap into your inner child so that you can begin to create great things with those who are around you. I think that leaders have the responsibility, as we were talking before the break, as my good friend Dolly Parton says, to inspire others to do more, to become more, to achieve more. And so that's what we want to do on today. And when we put these lessons into play, they'll change our lives in a very transformative way. All right. So the number one thing that I want, talk less, listen more. Rob, when I was a kid, one of the things my grandparents always say, boy, you talk too much. And I used to always tell them, you know what, one day, Grandma, people are going to pay me to talk. And so my grandmother's gone on to be with the Lord right now. But it's funny, doing these radio shows and being a pastor and doing executive leadership training, I spend the majority of my time talking. But what I've learned that when I'm put in front of other leaders, that my job then, my responsibility becomes to listen. When I'm talking with leaders and training, you've got to begin to listen. What would you say about the power of listening to those whom you're leading?
Very important, because I had lots of experience with that when I was in the Navy. I had to learn leadership techniques and learn to also listen to people who work for me, who had problems, things like that. So even to the people who I work for, if I didn't understand something, I had to go back to them. And it's more than just hearing somebody. You have to actually listen to what they were saying.
Absolutely.
Sure, ask them, because if you don't listen, you can screw things up or go the wrong way. Or someone you're leading, could see you're not as respecting who they are.
Absolutely.
What they have to say. So if you show, I found it as a rewarding factor when my subordinates knew that I listened to them. They came to me more with their issues and things of that sort. They were not afraid to talk to me because they knew that Rob listens. At least he listens to what I have to say. And I try to react on it. And the best way of listening is to repeat back what the person has said. If I said, Kareem, my car broke down this morning and I couldn't get to work, et cetera, et cetera. He said, "Oh, Rob, I'm sorry to hear that your car broke down," which means you heard that my car broke down and that's the reason why, so you repeat it back to me to really show that that's one form of listening.
Rob, I was dating this girl. She said, you don't listen to me. I'm like, I hear everything you say. Said, you hear me, but you're not listening. And she would give examples where I would go through an entire, we would go through this entire conversation. And after her explaining everything at the end, I'd be like, did you ever think about this? And she'd be like, that's what I just told you. So we have to understand that there is a difference between hearing. Hearing is something that we do just generically. As being a human, you have ears that work, or you have auditory canal. That means that sound happens and you're going to hear it. But when you listen, it means that you are attentive in terms of your processing, you're focusing, you're attentive. It is an intentional effort that we're leaning in and paying attention. Like you said, Rob, we're giving that authorization. Yes, I am hearing you. We're repeating what you're saying so that you too understand that we're listening to what you're saying. Now, what's important for understanding as it relates to a leadership lesson is that people will pay attention to you all day long. They'll listen to what you have to say because of your position. That's called positional leadership. And it is the least form of leadership that we could actually have. I'm the boss. You're the worker. I'm the leader, the head. I'm the head, and you are, subservient to me. So they'll listen to you because of your position. But the key is that a leader must then pay attention to what people are saying, especially to those who have views that differ or those individuals who have views that they feel don't count.
I found that listening increases the respect aspect. People have more respect for you. They may not necessarily like you, but they respect you more. And in the military, that's very important to have that respect.
Rob, one of the things that I've learned in putting out fires, sometimes things get to a place and people are just mad and they just want to rebel and you get through all this stuff. And when you sit down and you take 5 minutes and you don't talk about a punishment plan, you don't talk about disciplinary actions, you don't talk about, you have broken the code of conduct, but you stop and you say, okay, what's going on? Let me know where you are. What are you feeling? Help me to understand where you are. And when they do that, I found that I've seen people who were so irate get up and like, I just wanted somebody to hear me. I just wanted you to finally listen to me. And so I often say that tantrums or riots and anger and these little tantrums, they're riots of the soul. People just want to be heard. And so it's important as a leader that we take this number one step, very important. Let's stop talking so much. Let's be swift, slow to speak, and swift to hear. So let's take time to listen. Number two, I want you to learn that one of the most important things that you have as a leader, tools at your disposal, is being authentic. Be authentic, be passionate, even be emotional about what you believe in. Share your vision and live your values. This is so important. We have to understand most companies now are getting to a point, and I love this about Garber Management, because you can never be a part of that organization and not know what the vision is, because the moment you become a part of that organization, or even if you meet someone, when they give you their business card, on the back of their business card, it has the vision of the organization right there on the back. So everyone understands what that vision is. And then you go to certain companies like Dow Global, and there's I think it's Dow Global. I think Amazon does it. I think that Google does it well. When I'm looking at these, and you go and they have a section called core values. Now, core values means this is the heartbeat. This is how we operate. This is what we believe in. This is what motivates us. And this is what causes us to move. It's where we spend our time, our energy, and our resources. And so we have to make sure that as we are operating and we're leading, that we have to be authentic, that we have to share our vision, and we have to live our values. That means that a leader has to be the first person that recognizes how the company operates and be the example by which we operate. So we can't expect, because you're a leader, that you live by one set of standards, even though you teach another standard. And so it's important for us to understand. So be authentic. Number four here is, I skipped number 2. Don't step in with solutions too quickly. Okay, number 1 was talk less, listen more. I'll make number 2 be authentic. Number 3 is don't step in. And this is something that I've learned with these kids, Rob. Many times when we work with people, we want them to get the right answer. And so I saw kids coming in and, they were coaching. They were like, well, the answer is this. The answer is 20. Well, the answer is, 3 times, 4x pi or whatever. And they wanted the kids to get the answer. And I said, so you giving him the answer, did that help him to better understand how to solve or to work through this situation? They're like, no, but I just wanted to make sure that our team got it right so we could win. And I heard so many adult leaders in that conversation, Rob. We're so concerned about winning. We're so concerned about, breaking a bar, setting a curve, that we often forget that our team is only as strong as our weakest link. So as leaders, we have to make sure that we don't always just step in and give the answers and give solution, but we begin to tap in and to create that problem solving unit that we all have on the inside of us. All of us have the ability to solve problems. All of us have the ability to navigate and work through things that we see as problematic, but we have to have an environment where we can foster people making mistakes, learning a lesson, and moving forward. After all, it's not a mistake if you learn a lesson from it, right? It becomes a learning tool. So
that's how I taught my son play chess. I said, you never really lose if you learn something from the game. So whether you lose the game or not, you still won in a way, because if you learn something about the game, you learn about the other person's strategy. So you didn't really lose. Don't take it as such. It's part of sportsmanship.
Anytime I learn something from a particular situation, and whenever I look at something, no matter how bad it was, and I don't always want to do it, I ask myself, did I learn? What was my lesson that I learned? And if I can point out a lesson that I learned in that process, Rob, then I can say, you know what? I didn't lose. I learned. I didn't lose. I learned. And anytime you learn something in a situation, you're never a loser. All right. Number 4, don't diss downward. Somebody's like, what in the world does it mean? Don't diss downward. There are oftentimes, and working here at WSGW, and we're here on the radio, is a great example. Working for the state of Michigan, for governments, I've been in situations where there was a hierarchical approach in terms of how work was to get done. And quite often decisions are made from the top. They usually don't say, hey, we're going to implement a new strategy to expand our market reach, and say, okay, we want the secretaries and all of those who are administrators on the first line to come up with a plan. That's not the way it works. But those that are in power, those who are leaders, top level leaders, they make decisions based upon projections and numbers or whatever it is that are part of their core value that governs how that company moves. And then they make those decisions and they push them down. Most of them having never been at the lower levels to operate, to implement, and to work through those strategies. So oftentimes you'll see the head of a corporation, the boss, the CEO, the president, or whatever it is, the director, make a decision. And then those mid-level people who have to execute it, who have to deal with the parents, especially, I'll tell you, when I work with the Department of Corrections, and I love Department of Corrections, it was a great experience. I was there when Director Martin was there. And he was such a cool guy, but he was, appointed by the governor at that time. And he would, whatever the governor wanted to get done, he would make rules for all of the correctional facilities across the country, all across the state. And it would impact how I worked at central office, how we would handle, complaints from prisoners, handle requests from parents, and all of those things. And they would make these decisions. Like they made this decision. If you work for the state of Michigan, you cannot be affiliated with the felon. Half of your staff lives in the city of Detroit. Duh. Half of your staff has family or friends, and get me wrong. What I'm saying, not just Detroit, but what I'm saying is there were 5 major prisons in Detroit. A lot of the people who were incarcerated in Detroit are from Detroit. One of the issues that we had when we were working with prisons in Detroit was that family members could easily come up to the gate and throw whatever they wanted to over the fence because they were incarcerated in the backyard of where they were. And so these individuals, when they got out, they would come back to your family. We all have family members that have created felonies, regardless of your race or whatever it is. But to say that is a statement directly against individuals from communities of color who live in these communities and who may have a family member who has violated something and now has a felony. And so I cannot go to a family meeting because I have a family member who is a felony. And it was just one of those things, those ideas where leadership makes decisions and they push them down, and they never understand how the implementation of those things is very different than the philosophy that leadership has. So don't disnow it means even when you don't agree with it, even when you don't understand what leadership is doing, even when you think that this is the dumbest thing that I've ever seen or heard of in my life, you cannot diss the plan as we move downward. You've got to soak it up, pull yourself together. You've got to begin to figure out, how do I implement this, coalescing and corralling everyone around this, even when I don't necessarily fully believe in what it is that I'm doing, because your response to leadership often determines how others will respond to your leadership. So don't diss downward. Number 5. All right. You've got to say, I'm okay. You're okay. Right. Start this position that everyone is doing the best that they can. Now, one of the hardest things, Rob, is when things aren't functioning the way that we want them to. For instance, and we'll talk about this. There is using technology and media and technology, there's a learning curve here, and either you get it or you don't. And so we can either come in here, we get frustrated when we come in here and things go right, or we can say, listen, okay, I know you're not doing this on purpose. Where are we all at? If you're okay, I'm okay. Let's start from that point, and we'll begin to build on how can I help you? How can you help me? One of the things that people may never realize is the time that we spend off the air. And Rob is saying, oh, no, your diction is horrible there. And I thought I was a pretty articulate guy. But Rob was like, no, record that. Do you know that you always say on today? And I'm like, well, I've never thought about it as on today. But it's just the fact that we have to understand that we are all doing our best. And then how do we improve what we're working on in a way that we don't have to criticize one another, but we can begin to empower each other with the knowledge that we both have. And Rob,
I did it because I care,
Absolutely.
Professional. If I didn't care, that I've been in programs and worked with people who produce programs who didn't care, who really didn't give a damn, and because I care about what I do, it has my name on it. Even if you don't see my name,
absolutely,
I take exceptional care to it.
And I appreciate it, Rob. And what we learned in that lesson, that lesson right there, as we were talking with the kids, because there was a situation that one of the kids, well, that's not my fault. And oftentimes we get caught up in the blame game, and we get caught up in assigning fault, that we forget that it's not, if we just, okay, I'm at fault, it doesn't matter, because what we're trying to accomplish is not being met. So we've got to make sure that we don't we don't get into the blame game. If I'm okay, you're okay, we can move forward and make something great happen. Number 6, on these lessons of leadership that we must know that kids get overnight, that adults struggle with, is don't be the smartest person in the room. All right, I've got the smartest kid, and I'm just going to respond to him as L, just because his parents may listen to this conversation. And I don't want Lucas to think that I was, I'll just say his name. This young guy, to think he is an absolutely phenomenal young man. He is so intelligent and super duper bright. I absolutely love this young guy. Lucas, if you're out there, he inspires me. He makes me want to be a better teacher, a better leader, a better example. But Lucas is very involved. And I sat there and I was talking with the other teachers, and they were like, Lucas is absolutely amazing. He is an amazing young camper. And I said, but we got to make sure that as we teach, that we make sure that Lucas understands that you don't always have to be the smartest kid in the room. And coming in, and as we were talking about science, there was a portion of what we were talking about when we were doing the DNA of science. And my background is in physiology. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in physiological science. And the teacher for this program from Code 313 was a junior in college. And so he was talking. And as he was talking, I wanted to jump in and say, because I understood this information. And I had to pull myself back and say, you know what? I don't need to be the smartest person in the world, because even when you think that you know everything, if you stop and you listen, you begin to learn some things that maybe you overlook or didn't understand. And we've got to begin to empower other people. I feel like I'm smarter when I make other people feel like they're smarter. So we've got to make sure that it's not about being the smartest person in the room, but being the most effective person at making other people be their best. All right. Number 7, and we're going to get through these pretty quickly because, Rob, I know our time flies so fast. I want to talk about your why. What is your sense of purpose? Every leader, every individual, every person that has warm blood coursing through their veins, you have to understand your sense of purpose. Your team needs to know what you're doing and why they're doing what they're doing and how to do it. And you can begin to make a big difference when you begin to share with your team your why. Rob, why are you so passionate about making sure that things are done the right way? Why are you so, and for lack of a better term, Rob, you know I love you. Why are you so anal about keeping certain things a certain way, about the way that I say certain words, about my timing and coming in, about me doing my lead-ins? Why? Why is it so important, Rob?
Probably because I've gotten over this about 20 years ago, and I'm still working at it. But I've always been a perfectionist. I know I'm not perfect, but I like for things to be just so because it works out well that way. I've learned to let my hair down, so to speak, and relax over the last 20, 30 years. But when it comes to certain things that I'm passionate about that I love doing, I want it to be just right because, again, my name and my profession is on the line with it. I was tapped for this position to be a producer because superiors above me thought I would do a good job at it. They didn't just pick somebody from the street and say, okay, this is going to produce a show.
Thank you.
And something else has to do with it too, especially on this radio station. And I hope my bosses will forgive me for this, but I'm a black man who's helping another black man. And it's important to me that we give a good appearance in what we do and what we say, because I've studied the community. I've been around long enough to know how certain things are. And so I said, well, I'm not trying to change Kareem or anything, but if I can tweak certain things and whatnot to make his show better, then that's what I'm going to do. And, we're not going to discuss this a lot of times off the air and whatnot, but in the end product always comes out the way it is. I've spent a lot of time producing your show editing your show because I want it to be just so, because I don't know who's going to listen to it. Whether it be friends of yours or enemies of yours, or friends of mine or enemies of the station. They need to know that, that's some good stuff.
Yeah.
And even though I didn't agree with Kareem or agree with Rob or whatever it is, that's some good stuff. It's quality radio. So that's why, as I say, it's passion what I do.
Now, the reason why I asked Rob what's his why or his sense of purpose here is because when Rob comes in, he's a man who likes things to be a certain type. I was like, oh, Rob is a little stringent. That military guy. And we assess things to people based upon what we see externally about individuals. Right. But when we understand that the way that we begin to understand people and understand why people do what they do is to understand their why. And so having had these conversations with Rob and understanding what's important to him. Now, how I present myself, I feel I'm fine. I don't feel that my who I am as an individual, who I've developed to be, is up for the cause. I don't care what people have to say.
Well, it's all about perception.
But absolutely. And so people are going to perceive what they want to. So we differ a little bit, but I do respect the fact that your why tells you that because that we are two African-American men doing something on a radio station, which is predominantly white for a number of years, that we need to make sure that we do so in a very professional way. Now, when I understood that as being a part of your why, I was then able to submit to some of the other crazy things that you make me do over and over and over again. And I say that we have to understand that what the sense of purpose is that leadership is having. And as leaders, it's important for us to understand and to communicate our sense of purpose and to communicate with those we're leading what our why is, because often they may not agree with what it is that we're doing, but when they understand why we're doing what we're doing, they'll tend to fall in line.
When you do your why with love and affection, then it's all good. You may not feel that love and affection, but me, I say, well,
I feel it, Rob. I feel the love in the air.
Because like I said, anyone could do this program. A monkey could do this show.
No, Rob, a monkey couldn't do this show. It's a bit more technical because I sat over there where you were, and I was like, "Oh, this is above my pay grade."
But I've been to stations and worked with radio people who just did it sloppily, and then when the end product comes out, it is I can't listen to this anymore. Who produced this? And I criticize the stations I used to work for. So It's all about love. You have to put love in your why.
Hey, you got to put love in your why. But you know what? My grandmother will say, look, I'm like, Grandma, this is so good. How did you make this? She said, boy, you got to cook it with a little love in it.
Put your foot in it.
You got to put your foot in. Got to put a little loving in your cooking, and also refer and share with people what your why is. All right, number 8. And Rob, where are we at with time? So I can make sure we get these points in there. All right, I'm going to get these points in number 8. Being right isn't always enough. Being right isn't enough. Don't worry about always being right. Sometimes we get so caught up with being right, and we don't realize that being right is the furthest thing from moving this ship forward. So sometimes, I'll be okay with being wrong. How can we get better the next time? Number 9, let's focus on a few things. Working with these young people, they were so glad. They had all of these lists of things that we put on this vision board. And I said, okay, now I want us to just forget about everything. I want us to focus on one thing that we're going to do. And we're going to do that one thing well. They were so glad to abandon all of the other thoughts and work on one thought. And I said to myself, why can't we as adults, more mature adults, do the same thing? Because we find ourselves having attachments to all of the things that we have to do in such a way that we find it hard to pull away and to just do one thing and do that one thing well. All right, number 10. Get out and about. If you're going to lead anybody, you've got to lead you've also got to visit the position from which they are operating. When you begin to do that, then you'll see things with new eyes, fresh perspective. The guy at the top may make the decisions, but are you going to follow those decisions as they go down the chain of command to see how they impact the work of those who are out there? And the last thing, number 11, is I need you to keep trying. Don't beat yourself up when you don't live up to your own expectations. Reflect and learn from those times when you stumble and fall over the 10 other things that we have found as resolutions. All right. I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. I want to leave you with this quote. Great leaders don't set out to become a leader. They set out to make a difference. It's never about the role. It's always about the goal. I certainly thank you guys for tuning in today to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. As we continue, we're going to have a great conversation. Rob, we have a book that we've got to talk about, White Fragility. And many people are going to be like, oh, here they go again. But I think it's going to offer some great conversations. So be prepared. On next week, we'll have a conversation about white fragility. And as usual, I don't believe in red states or blue states, white folks and black folks, but I long for the day when we are truly United Shades of Gray. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.